What's up, everybody? Welcome into a special edition of Showtime with Ira Schoffel. I'm Aslan Hajavandi. Ira joining us from Hartford, Connecticut, site of Florida State's opening round matchup against Vermont in the NCAA Men's National Tournament. Ira, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm glad to be in my hotel room and not outside braving the conditions where it was like 26 degrees this morning, which makes no sense for late March.
Yeah, that'll hurt the feelings, I think, as you tweet it out, man. When you look at the phone and see it's that sort of temperature. All right, so today how it works out is that there's an open shoot around and there's also some media availability. How's the atmosphere out there? Where there's some Florida State fans spotted in the crowd looking at the open practice? I know there's a lot of Florida State fans in New York City. They want to maybe come over there to Hartford. I don't know if they'll be able to sneak away for a shoot around on a Wednesday, but hopefully they'll be able to get out there Thursday afternoon and support their Noles.
I mean, I'm sure there were about 6 or 7 there today. It's the shoot around. It's not the full. It's not a game. So there were a few fans that came up. I think mostly it was boosters who came up on the trip with the team. They usually have a few of those that will come up on each trip. So, but it was a smattering. You know, the cool thing about watching the first day though of you get the press conferences and then you also get the practices. They call them practices. They're basically just shoot arounds. Is to see the different fan bases and which ones do turn out. I mean, Villanova is about 3.5, 4 hours away from here. And it was when you've won 2 national titles in the last 3 years. I mean, they had a lot of people just there for the shoot around. A couple other schools did too. A couple other schools had decent. Vermont had a smattering of people. They're pretty close. I'm expecting a much more exciting environment tomorrow. But today was mostly business, guys talking about the matchups. They had press conferences with all 8 teams, and just a chance to kind of talk to guys and do stories for. I put up a couple stories on the website. I've got a couple more coming for tomorrow.
Yeah, check it out, folks. If you're not a member, use the promo code WARCHANT30 for 30 free days of access to your ultimate Seminole sports source. The biggest piece of news that felt like, Ira, and I don't know how newsy it is, it felt newsy to me at least, was the fact that Phil Kofer's status right now is up in the air. He'll probably be a game-time decision, spotted in a boot. What did Leonard Hamilton have to say about that, and how does he sound about perhaps his level of optimism or skepticism on Kofer's availability for tomorrow's game?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's been one of those things that where they're going to let it probably be up to Phil. I don't think that it's a situation where he could do any more damage to it. And I'm not exactly sure what the injury is to his foot, but I think it's probably been a continuation of what he's been dealing with all season. And so I think it's going to be up to him, but maybe with the trainers conferring, the athletic trainers kind of chiming in as well, and team doctors. But they don't know. I mean, they're hopeful. That was kind of the interesting thing talking to the coaches, is that they desperately want Phil to be able to play. And you get the sense it's not really for the team. I think they feel like the team's going to be okay either way. But they really want Phil to have one more opportunity to play in an NCAA tournament. They are hopeful that, even if he isn't able to play tomorrow, though, that he would be able to play in the later games in the tournament. So it's, I don't know that they need him to beat Vermont, but you could tell the players and the coaches really want him out there because he is kind of, an emotional leader for the team.
There's some sort of belief out there, or looking ahead, people will say, well, just go ahead and rest Kofer for perhaps a Sweet 16. But it feels like if you're at this point in the season and your status for the opener is in the air, 5-6 days probably isn't going to do a lot. So you do think that it's one of those things where it's probably some sort of pain threshold, or just kind of how Phil wants to deal with it. It's not necessarily something that might get worse.
Yeah, that's how I think it's probably pretty similar to what Trent Forrest has been doing. I think it just probably flared up recently and got worse. But I think that Phil, again, he's a guy that when you talk to the teammates, and I'm actually doing a story on Phil as well. But you talk to the teammates and the coaches. Last summer, apparently, he was just unbelievable in their open gyms and their workouts, just killing it. And he comes into the season, he's been beset by injuries his whole career. And then sure enough, he got more injuries this season. And so they're disappointed for him, but they say he's just been a great teammate through all of it. He's always been a positive influence. And, they're just hoping he gets a few more chances to play in college.
In talking to Vermont, I know you have a couple stories up there, obviously, right now on warchant.com. One of them was kind of looking at this game through the optics or the perspective of Vermont. How do they seem to be taking this matchup in stride? Granted, Florida State's a 4 seed, 4 versus 13 is one of those less likely to, the 5-12 is always the sexy sort of upset. I think they mentioned the fact that they won't be playing a team nearly that has the length that Florida State has, but do they seem like a team that's showing, I don't want to say too much respect to Florida State, but is it a team that feels good about their chance, you think, when you were able to speak to them?
They're confident. I mean, they're a pretty confident team. I don't know that. I think they understand the situation, and the players and Coach Becker both talked about how look, even though they played Kansas and they played Louisville, two athletic teams, two long teams, neither one of those is anything like Florida State. I mean, very few teams in the country, if any, have Florida State's combination of length and depth and athletic ability. So, somebody asked a question. I think someone asked their coach to discuss, how do you prepare for it? How do you simulate it in practice? And he kind of avoided the question. And I think it's because what can you do? There's just not really much you can do to simulate it. But, I think they're going to live and die by the three, it sounds like. I think they realize that they're not, trying to get the ball inside anywhere near the paint is probably going to be ill-advised. So you're going to see them try to shoot some threes. One interesting thing he talked about, a lot of people on our message boards kind of right away, chimed in about it, was he also said that they hope to get out in transition and try to score before Florida State sets up their defense. That makes perfect sense because, you don't really want any defense to set up in the half court, but you certainly don't want Florida State's with their size. But, the other side of it is, do you really think you're going to succeed in an up and down kind of game against Florida State? So that seems foolhardy, but it's kind of one of those things where they may be just picking their poison.
Hey, we're going to try to do something really bold and ambitious right here, Ira. We're going to go ahead and we're going to try to bring in Corey Clark.
Wow.
So stand by. We're going to call him right now, ladies and gentlemen. I don't even know if it's going to work. So it's going to be fun. This is like what I miss. It's like live TV. We're just going to throw things to the wind and see how it goes. Can you hear the phone ringing, Ira?
I do hear the phone ringing.
That's promising. That's encouraging.
Hello.
Corey Clark?
What's up?
Hey, man. You're live on YouTube on Showtime with Ira Schoffel. Ira, can you hear Corey?
I can hear.
Uh-oh.
I hear Corey and a whole lot of other stuff.
An ambulance just drove by me. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no. So people can see me but hear Corey. That's probably the best of all worlds.
Yeah, it's just
Sure.
Yeah, everything is super solid right now, man. So, Corey, welcome.
What kind of lighting? Thank you. What kind of lighting does Ira have?
I've got a lamp propped up against the window in the hotel room. So
okay, sweet. So you don't look like you're in a freezer?
No. No.
Aslan gave me the thumbs up. I think we're good.
Hey, he looks good.
Okay, all right, sweet.
Corey, we're talking about the Vermont game that's going down tomorrow. Ira kind of shared his perspective of Vermont's possible game plan, live by the three. Do you think that's a recipe for a Vermont team that's going to be going up against a team like Florida State that poses a physical disadvantage for the Catamounts?
Yeah, it's kind of the beauty of the sport is that, they're overmatched. Like, I think their starting lineup, they have 1 6'6" guy. Meanwhile, what does Florida State run in their rotation? They have, probably 6 guys that are 6'6" or bigger, including a 7'4" and a 6'10". But the beauty of the sport is if you get hot from three, the size advantage doesn't really matter. I think that's the way to beat Florida State if you're Vermont. It'll be interesting to see what Florida State does. What's the name of their kid that averages all the points, Ira? That scores like 21 a game?
I just wrote a story about him.
Lamb's his last name.
Oh, sorry, I meant to put you on the spot. So that kid, like, what are they going to do with him? Like, I doubt that kid gets single covered a lot in league play. And to his credit, he scored like 26 on Kansas. So he scored against good teams. But what is Florida State going to do with him? Because if you try to double him, then you're going to leave a lot of guys that can shoot open. I think they have 3 or 4 guys that shoot a lot of their threes. But if you're Vermont, I just think that's the play, right? You're in a size disadvantage. You can't really compete physically or athletically with Florida State, but the three ball is the great equalizer. And if Florida State's not hitting on the other end, you got a real shot to pull an upset if you can shoot well. So yeah, go that route.
Well,
what are they going to post up and try to score a lot of points in the paint?
Try to get Kamaje in foul trouble. No, I think the problem, though, I think the big problem for Vermont is at the other end of the floor. I mean, and their coach said they've been a good defensive team, and he's really their big focus right now is going to be on rebounding because they feel like they're a good defensive team. They got to make sure they get the ball back after they get a missed shot. But I don't know. I mean, how are they going to defend Cabangeli inside? I mean, let alone Kumaje, who's going to be literally a foot taller than anybody else they have on their team. I mean, I know it's not as easy as just lobbing it in there to the big guys, but I just have a hard time understanding how they're going to stop Florida State.
Yeah, it'll be. I think they play man to man mainly. From what I can tell, is they're mostly a man to man team. But I think you just slough off and make the guys shoot threes. I mean, you got two guys in the starting five, and Mann and Forrest that aren't terrible shooters. I think Trent Forrest has made his last three pointers, by the way.
Watch out.
In three different games, so he's on fire. But those guys don't like to shoot threes. They like to drive to the basket. I think you just try to pack it in and make them shoot threes. But yeah, they're going to be at a supreme disadvantage because even if they get Florida State to shoot threes and they miss, you would think Florida State with Terrence Mann, Cabangeli, and Raekwon Gray, those are three really good offensive rebounders that do a real good job around the rim of going and getting rebounds. So, when you're a team like Vermont, you have to, you have to give away something. And I think what you do is you can't guard these guys man to man. I don't know if they're going to play a zone, but I think they'll play some semblance of a defense where Florida State is going to have to shoot threes or be there. And Leonard said it a few times. I think he said it after one of the Virginia Tech games. It's like we took the bait. Like they wanted us to shoot threes, and we shot a bunch of threes. 36, I think, in the game against Virginia Tech at home. So that's what Vermont has to do is hope Florida State shoots a lot of threes and hope they miss them. Otherwise, no, they don't have a chance to guard a Cab. They don't have anybody on the roster that can guard a Cabangeli. Not many teams do. They certainly don't. One thing I am interested in, though, and Ira maybe, you Aslan too, get you involved, is
I'm good, man.
When you're a team like Vermont and the referees see that everybody on the team is 6'6" or smaller, and then you see a team like Florida State with all these perceived giants, maybe I think a lot of it can come down to the whistle. And are they going to call Florida State for every little foul, every little push on a rebound, or are they going to let them play? If they let them play, then Florida State should win comfortably. But if they have a tight whistle and can get Florida State in foul trouble, and I'm not saying the refs will feel bad for Vermont, but they might. That happens. And, maybe Cabangeli gets a legitimate rebound, but they call him for pushing off. They call him for over the back. Well, then that's how Vermont stays in the game. You get Florida State's bigs in foul trouble, and you hit some threes.
Ira, let me ask you this, or let me ask you first, and then, Corey, you can hop in, obviously. If Phil Kofer can't play or can't go, who's going to profit off that? Whose minutes will he sort of absorb? Or who will absorb his minutes, rather?
Well, I would think Raekwon Gray probably initially. But I also think because of the size, the lack of size at Vermont, I think it opens up some opportunities where you can go small so that now you maybe can play Vassell more. I really thought Devin Vassell, what we've seen the last couple of weeks out of him, reminds me of last year with Cabangeli. Cabangeli really turned it on last year in the postseason, and I kind of feel like Vassell maybe could do the same thing. So I think Vassell's a guy that you might see continue to get more minutes, especially in this game where, it's not like you need size against Vermont.
Corey, what do you think, man? What do you think? No Phil Kofer, a big deal, little deal, no deal?
Yeah, I do think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal on both ends of the floor. I think Kofer's one of their better three-point shooters. And he doesn't rebound really at all anymore. I think Vassell had 7 rebounds in the Duke game, and that's more than Kofer's had in a game all year. So Kofer's not really much of a rebounder, but he is a guy that can make big shots, and he knows what to do on defense. He's not a shot blocker necessarily, but he's a guy that can switch and can stay in front of guys and knows where to be and what to do. So that is a big that's with the way Florida State plays. I think Raekwon Gray probably is a better offensive player right now than Phil Cofer because he can do more things and he's healthy. But defensively, that's I'm not going to say he's a liability, but he's not Phil Cofer. So when you're switching and you assume Florida State's switching every screen and everybody's 6'5" or under, Raekwon Gray, they might take advantage of a Raekwon Gray. I do think that if they go with Vassell, which they might do, heck, that's the crazy thing, right? Like Vassell is as tall as anybody they've got on their team. So you got to figure they're not at a huge disadvantage if they play him, and he's a good rebounder. But yeah, I do think that's a big that's a big absence if Cofer can't play. He's a veteran guy. He's like 22, 23 years old, and he's been in these situations before, and he's knocked down big shots. So that's a big deal. But yeah, the guy was right. I think Vassell has really, really turned it on here lately, and I watched that dude, and I'm like, I don't understand how he won't be an NBA player in 3 years. That guy's just legit. He is a good player.
Yep.
Ira, what's the likelihood that a former Great Dane, a transfer from Albany, is going to help Florida State out in a big way tomorrow? David Nichols.
Yeah, good old David Nichols. He that was funny. Talking to the different people involved in their responses to the topic of David Nichols and what he brings in terms of his knowledge of Vermont from when he was at Albany and played in the America East Conference. First, we talked to David Nichols, and he was like, I'll let the coaches coach, and I'll just offer a little bit of information if I can. But basically, we play, the coaches coach, they come up with a game plan. Then we talked to Stan Jones, and he was like, oh man, as soon as Vermont showed up on the TV, David Nichols cornered me at the corner pocket, or what's not the wrong place. Wrong place.
The corner pocket, he said.
Well, they're not. Neither one of them is sponsoring us, so it's okay.
Right.
They were at Madison Social, and before, like Stan Jones said, literally as soon as he came up on the TV, Nichols went over to him and said, "Coach, I played those guys 3 years. I can tell you all kinds of stuff." So he has been sharing information. Not only that, I thought the most interesting thing Stan said was that David has actually been calling his old teammates at Albany, asking about things they might be doing differently this year to help prepare. I don't know that Florida State needs all of this, but it's kind of cool. Leonard Hamilton and David Nichols kind of both downplayed it. Stan Jones and Trent Forrest. Trent Forrest was like, man, he's been awesome. He knows everything about their team. And so, just one more little thing. I mean, I think it's something for the guys to kind of get excited about that, hey, we've got a guy who has some information about this team. And, I don't know if they'll need it, but it's still pretty cool.
And we don't know if it'll actually be a benefit or not, but I do think it should help, right? That, like, if Florida State was going to even think about taking a team like Vermont lightly, well, man, they know how good David Nichols is. They've been with him now for a year, and they've seen, he helped almost basically win the Virginia game for him. They know how good that dude is, and that's the league he played in for 3 years. So you can't take these guys lightly and say, hey, they play in the America East. When one of your better players, a guy that's in your rotation that's been a big part of your program this year, also played in the America East, and, oh, by the way, never beat Vermont. So, there's real players in that league, and that's a real team. Like, if Vermont plays well and Florida State plays average or a little below average, Vermont can win the game. And I would think, don't you think that, like, having a guy like Nichols that's from that conference and they know, oh, yeah, he can really play. Like, he's a professional. He's going to play basketball for the next 5 or 6 years at least and make money doing it. Don't you think that helps that they have a guy from that league on their team and they know how good he is?
Well, that's exactly what Stan Jones said, that he goes, coaches can stand up there all day and put up film clips and say, this guy's really good, that guy's really good. But when one of your guys says, no, that guy really can play, you better do this or that guy's going to torch you. It's a big deal. And look, the whole difference between, we all know this, the difference between the mid-majors and the big schools is the size. I mean, they're just not, the America East teams like Vermont, they're just not going to have the 6'10" athletes, the 7-footers. But their guards and their small forwards, their wings, usually aren't a huge difference from a team like Florida State. And so to the point of, if they hit their threes and if Florida State's bigs get in foul trouble, then yeah, that's like Corey was kind of painting the picture earlier. I mean, that's how upsets like that can happen.
Also, I would say that Vermont would be able, their little guys, when they're trying to guard Kabengele or Kumaje, will be able to get away with more defensively than Florida State will on the other end if the referees are calling it like that. Like, if the referees are going to let them push, use their forearms and push Kumaji out of the paint, which is illegal. But if they allow them to do that, or same with Cabangeli, like just straight up push the guy because I don't want to say they feel bad for him, but that's just human nature, man. We've said it forever about when Duke offensive linemen were trying to block Florida State in the 90s and were never calling for holds. There's a chance that the referees see that matchup and say, okay, I'm going to let that 6'5" guy get away with pushing the 7'4" kid out of the paint a little bit. Even if it's subconsciously, there's a chance that happens. So that's something you have to worry about too.
How many more years is it going to be before Florida State's offensive line starts getting those pity calls?
Hey-o.
Yeah, I feel like one more losing season and they're getting them all.
All right, guys. So, past this prologue, people like to say, in terms of what happened last year, Florida State making a run to the Elite Eight, maybe overlooked by some of their opponents in the run-up to that, but also Vermont coming from the America East, which, birthed everybody, UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, or Baltimore County, however I'm supposed to pronounce it, Ira. You're the authentic article. Do you think that those sort of things offset in terms of Florida State maybe overlooking Vermont? You mentioned David Nichols coming forth and telling them, hey, these guys are legit, but just the fact that they know a team came from that conference last year and was the first 16 to ever beat a 1, and then Florida State obviously making their run maybe under the radar last year, but this year being more of a known sort of entity. Do you think those things balance out, even out, or does one of them maybe outweigh the other right now, Ira?
It's kind of funny. Like when I was talking to the players today, like, I don't know if there's been a couple, I think somebody from ESPN, I'm not sure where else, but like have picked Florida State as kind of, or Vermont as like the upset possibility, like a team that could, if somebody's going to pull off an upset, Vermont's the team that could do it. And it's like, even when Florida State's playing Vermont, people are trying to fade Florida State. Like it's, and to your point, I mean, I think FSU's kind of been that team with the chip on their shoulder, really for a while. And now Vermont's kind of coming in and I guess going to try to assume that throne. But yeah, I mean, I think that, I think Florida State that's kind of what makes them good. And they need to have that mentality. I think if Florida State's not good enough, I don't think as a program to go into a game like this and just kind of coast and then put Vermont away late. This Florida State team plays its best when it feels challenged, when it feels threatened. So the fact that people are talking about the America East and UMBC and all that, and it was brought up today, I think that's a good thing. I think Florida State needs that kind of juice, especially in a game like this, because I think when you watch this team all year, they play much better when they play a team that they feel threatened by than if it's a team that they're expected to beat.
What about you, Corey? Would Coach Clark get in front of the boys and say, "Don't get retrievered"? Get it?
Yeah, man. I don't know that I would ever say those words. I don't know if those words would ever come out of my mouth, but I would say, I agree with Ira. They're not good enough to overlook anyone that's in the tournament. I mean, this is a conference champion that has a really good record. They played Kansas. I think they played Louisville. Weren't blown off the floor by either one of them. So they can really play, man. And again, Vermont is going to have as many guys drafted off this team as Florida State, save for Cabangeli maybe next year. You know what I mean? It's not like Florida State is loaded with all this great NBA talent. They just play really well together, but that's because they play together, and they play hard for each other. And that's because they don't take anybody lightly. They haven't. Now that's the ACC. We'll see. I mean, and again, we got to remember they did struggle at home against Notre Dame. They did struggle at home against, NC State. They did not play well for about 30 minutes against Wake Forest, and then were awesome for 10 minutes when they needed to be. So it's not like they've just these last two months or 7 weeks have been just incredible, stellar from start to finish. Their record is, but they haven't been. So they've had lulls, and I think what helps them though moving forward. And guys, I want to apologize. I might be hitting a bad spell. So if I do, and I lose you, just know that I love both of you, and I want you to have a great show with or without me. But I do think what helps them is last year being in those games in the NCAA tournament. Being especially the Xavier game. Like they were down 11 points with like 8 minutes to go in that game against Xavier, whatever I'm supposed to call them. It should be Xavier. I think we all agree on that.
Damn right.
Xavier. Give me a break and spell it with a Z. But they have that experience, and they have the experience of just playing Virginia and playing Duke essentially at Duke in the ACC championship game. Those are stuff. That's stuff you should be able to rely on if you get in a tough moment, even in a first-round game against Vermont. Because Florida State's going to have 70 fans there, maybe. Whoever's in the traveling party in the Seminole Sound, that's going to be who's cheering for Florida State. But they've had so many good experiences on the road this year and on neutral sites that you think they can draw from that later on today, whenever people are listening to this. I guess they're listening to it right now, so never mind. Tomorrow, when they play Vermont, I think they can draw on their past NCAA tournament experience from last year and what they've done this year in the postseason already.
Boom. All right. I don't know if we should make predictions or not. I will say, how about this? Will we be here next week, but Ira in a Marriott hotel in Anaheim, California?
Oh, wow.
I say yes.
You say yes?
I say yes.
I probably, yeah. I mean, those two other teams, I mean, they're legitimate threats. Murray State and Marquette are both not great teams, but they both have great players on their teams. And when you play a team like that in the postseason, anything can happen. So I think Florida State will advance through this weekend, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. I wouldn't say they're going to cruise. As far as this first game goes, I think FSU is going to win. I think, Corey mentioned those other games where FSU would struggle. What's been amazing about this team is they could kind of struggle for a while, and then all of a sudden you look up and they're up 16, or you look up and they're up 18 or 20. I mean, they go on runs where it's like, whoa, what just happened? So I think that's probably what's going to happen, especially if Florida State doesn't shoot well early. But at some point, I think Florida State's going to get up significantly, and then maybe Vermont closes it a little bit at the end. But I think the point spread is down to like 9 points. It wouldn't surprise me if it's around there, but I think Florida State, will pull away in the second half.
I think the one thing you worry about, Florida's defense travels, and Florida State will be the best defensive team that Vermont has played. But it's a weird sport, man. This is a team that shoots about 25 or 26 threes a game. Vermont, I'm talking about. If they hit 12 of them, if they're throwing them in from the ocean, well, you might lose. I mean, that's the beauty of the sport and the agony of the sport. Better teams lose all the time because another team gets hot. If you can keep them from getting hot from three, if you're even with them from three, or obviously if you score more from three than they do, you're definitely going to win. But if you're even with them from three or close to it, you should win. But, you never know. Vermont might hit 12 or 13 or 15 threes, and you might lose. That's the agony of the sport. I do think I think the first game is more – I think that's a bigger I don't know. I think that's the one that's going to be tougher to win than the second game even. I think if they win the first game, they're definitely getting to Anaheim. I just think the first game, because of the unknown, it's Vermont. You just never know how they're going to come out. That's the one you worry about. I think if they get past Vermont, I would feel very confident about whoever they're playing in the second round.
Ira, we have some
or the round
suggestions.
of 32. Whatever we call it, the round of 32. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't. Second round, man. That's how we say it.
Yep.
Mick Michaels on YouTube, Ira, gave you some food suggestions in case you want some. Barbecue,
Awesome.
Bear Smokehouse, seafood, Fishy Tales food truck, and good breakfast close to Hartford, Sloppy Waffle. FYI, though, Sloppy Waffle is cash only.
That's good to know. We actually went to the Bear place for dinner tonight, so it's already checked one off.
What'd you think, Ira? What'd you think?
It was good. It was good. I had the pork nachos, which is always kind of one of my standard barbecue plays, and overdid a little bit. Not feeling great right now.
Oh, great. Well, that's good.
Toughing it through
Awesome.
just for us.
What's Hartford like overall, Ira? Just downtown Hartford. What's it like?
It's not New York City.
Okay. All right.
It's not Chicago. It's
Because
not.
you usually hear them compared, like people when they talk about big cities and great cities in this country. It's usually New York, Chicago, and Hartford in some order.
It's not Charlotte. It's not Atlanta.
What about Jacksonville?
It's not.
There you go. The Jacksonville in the north.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, a little Jacksonville-ish. Jacksonville, but colder. Maybe a little. Yeah, maybe a little.
Yeah, without
cleaner.
the beach.
Without the bridges.
Okay, a little cleaner, but not as warm. Okay, all right.
Corey, let me pose you this question, since this is also going to probably be adapted into part of our Renegade Express on Wake Up War Chant. Use the promo code WarChant30 if you're not a member of WarChant.com. Central Florida Knoll fan tweets at Wake Up War Chant, asks us, Corey, and you as well, Ira, but you go first, Corey. Would it be a disappointment if Florida State's run ended at the Sweet 16 to Gonzaga, or is anything beyond that just cake?
Man, I don't think it'd be a disappointment at all. Look, they're probably guys. They're probably not winning the national championship.
Stop
And
it.
if we're honest with ourselves, they're probably not going to the Final Four.
Come
So
on.
all of this, I think, as long as they get by Vermont, everything else is like, okay, well, that was an awesome season. That's a bummer, but that's an awesome season. Even if they lose to Vermont, I'm different, I know. But I think it's been an awesome season to cover no matter what happens. It's been a lot of fun. There have been really cool moments in this season, no matter what happens. But I get that we put so much stock on what happens these next 3 weeks that a loss this weekend will be considered a disappointment. But if you get through this weekend, I don't think Florida State ain't Kentucky, man. Like, how many Sweet 16s has Florida State been to? 6, 5? So if you win these 2 games this weekend, I think anything after that is a supreme accomplishment. You're going to be disappointed no matter how it ends. But I think anything past this weekend is a really good season and a really good showing.
It's such a shame what the Braves did to you. I know. It's like talking to somebody who just got destroyed by a loved one, like a spouse, just the heartbroken and they can't ever love again.
Took everything.
I mean, you set yourself up for failure. It's like I've never seen anything like it before.
I'm rubbing off on him, Ira.
Maybe,
guys, I'm a hardcore Atlanta sports fan. So how would I be? Wouldn't it be all crazy if I was like, yeah, man, if they don't get to the Final Four, that's crazy. This is an easy draw. I expect them to get there, and then when it doesn't happen, I'm like gobsmacked. And it's like a gut punch.
Yeah,
you can't get punched in the gut. But you can't get punched in the gut if you're already doubled over.
There's a big,
you know what I mean? If you're already protecting yourself.
But there's a big gap between expecting to lose and being 100% sure you're going to win and go to the Final Four. I mean, there's only probably a couple teams in the country that go into a season or go into the postseason and think, man, if we don't go to the Final Four, it's a disaster. I don't think Florida State should feel that way, but they also should, I think the fans should feel good about their chances. I mean, there's a difference between, feeling like, hey, this is a team that can make a run to the Final Four versus saying they're definitely going to do it, or what you're doing, which is, well, they're probably not going to do anything. So just enjoy this win over Vermont while you can get it.
I guess again, like what I told Aslan earlier in the week is like I would hate for them to lose this first weekend and then that be like a referendum on the whole season. Like, oh, what a disappointment of a season. It's just things happen, but it's been an awesome season no matter what happens the next 2 or 3 weekends. And we get so caught up, especially in basketball, with how the season ends as opposed to how it was for the first 33 games or whatever it's been. So that's all. I'm just, they're going to probably lose at some point over the next 2 weekends. Odds are. So, but still, that doesn't take away from the season they had. And I wonder if they did lose to Vermont, what the overriding feeling would be. Like crushed or like upset at ham? Like what would that feeling be?
Well, it's not going to happen, so we don't have to worry about it. Hey,
we don't even worry about it, do we?
Yeah, let's go to the viewer questions. Bimini Bound is asking, how drunk was that ESPN analyst that was on the show the other day? Was that interview on St. Patrick's Day? I'm paraphrasing here, but he said FSU deserves a number 4 seed, and that's okay because FSU gets Gonzaga, the weakest of the number 1s, but then he picks Gonzaga to win it all. I don't even care about 3 or 4 until I heard that guy speak. Wake Up War Chant is supposed to be my safe place from that stuff. Still enjoyed it, though. FSU to the Final Four, go Noles. Yeah, it's my guy, Dallin Cuff. He did say that he thinks that Florida State got a good draw, even if they don't like their seed line. They have a good draw. They have one of the more manageable 1 seeds in Gonzaga, but he thinks that it's going to be Gonzaga, North Carolina in the final, and Gonzaga cuts the nets down. So that was a bit odd. But I think he was in the middle of his whole he was part of the whole marathon thing. He had like a shift at 1 in the morning and then one at 3 in the morning, so I'll give him some slack. But a lot of people upset because he also said that the SEC was better than the ACC, and I didn't call him out on that. So I apologize.
The thing is, I think it's clear that the selection committee thinks that. I mean, I think that
they've got more teams, I think, than any other conference.
Yeah, well, I think the Big Ten maybe got more, but the SEC, you could tell where like LSU's wins were in the SEC were valued more than Florida State's wins in the ACC. I think when you look at, and I think, Coach Krzyzewski, after the ACC tournament, kind of was lobbying a little bit for the ACC, and I think he caught wind of the fact that the selection committee was not going to view the ACC as high as we all think that the ACC is clear, cut and dry, the best conference. But I don't think the selection committee and some of those people felt that this year. And I think that, so I wasn't, when he said that, I wasn't surprised. And that, the thing about that guy is he's so smart that, like, I didn't even catch the whole Gonzaga thing when he said it, but that's a good point. How could they be the easiest number one and then also pick them to win it all?
Yeah.
I like that Ira calls him Coach Krzyzewski. He ain't your coach, buddy. But also, I just like that you show reverence to the veterans and the administrators in our sport, but in the Hall of Famers. But you don't call him Coach Hamilton. Come on, Ira. What's up with that?
Maybe I don't know why I called him Coach Krzyzewski.
Yeah, that was weird. He's Mike.
You
call him Mike or Coach K.
I wouldn't call him Mike. I'd call him Coach K.
But I would say the weird thing about the seeding when it comes to the ACC is they did have 3 number 1 seeds, so they obviously think they're pretty good.
Yeah,
I think they think they're top heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
But then also when it comes to seeding, and I know it really doesn't matter. I mean, you got to win, you got to beat who you got to beat. Florida State was in Orlando 2 years ago and got housed by Xavier. So the location doesn't matter as a 3, and seeding doesn't matter that much. But not only is Florida State behind Purdue and behind LSU, who they beat, both of them, and similar records or better records in Purdue's case, but they're the same seed as Virginia Tech, who they also have a better record than and beat twice. So it just felt like the committee was like, well, we got to throw them in there somewhere. I guess they're a 4, sure, and send them to Hartford. It's just odd that the way – when you look at all the factors that Florida State is seeded even with Virginia Tech and then behind 2 teams that they beat from other conferences with worse records. It's just bizarre. That's all. I mean, you still got to beat who you got to beat. But, whatever. At least you're not in Duke's region.
Sorry about that. That was my father calling. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, but it went through because he's on my exception list. So are you, Ira, and so are you, Corey. Even when my phone's on Do Not Disturb, your guys' calls will go through. Let's get to the next question. This is still a basketball-related question. It comes from Bowden-Law. What's up, guys? Love the show. He means our show, Ira, Corey, and I's show. Wake Up Word Champ. Did you guys do headlines this week?
No.
Okay.
And I don't quite understand why Ira gets to take part in the Renegade Express.
Yeah, should I get off now?
No, people want to know your opinion, man.
All right, I just feel territorial. I don't know that Ira belongs on this, but whatever. Let's go. Ira, you answer. Go ahead.
I'm driving. I'm not talking as much. We're letting Ira's taking my part in the show, which is totally fine by me. Bowden-Law asks, I want to ask you a basketball question. How much longer do you feel that Leonard will coach? Also, who makes your all-Hamilton era FSU hoops team? Any possible lineup of 5 players? I'll say like Diego Romero, some Alexander Johnson. Give me some Tim Pickett.
You're going with the all non-NCAA tournament Hamilton team.
Hart. They had Hart, Ira. In droves, they had Hart.
Von Wafer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, Tony Douglas has got – Tony Douglas, right? Yes? No?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
Tony Douglas is definitely on there. For sure.
Tony Douglas and Al Thornton are first ballot.
Yes. I would say those
he's
two.
He's the captain.
Yeah. So Tony and Al, Cabangeli, even if he leaves after this year, I would have to to be the 6th man of the year, that's a pretty big honor, no?
Yeah, I don't know that he's done. I mean, he's had a lot of Tim Pickett could really be on that. Tim Pickett was awesome.
He was.
Yeah.
He was.
He could definitely be on that list, even though he didn't play in the tournament. Yeesh, man, I don't know. That's a hard one. Tony and Al for sure. Michael Snare probably.
Okay.
Wouldn't you think? He played in 3 tournaments, and if I remember correctly, hit some big shots. So those 3 for sure. Ira, you got any more to add? Do you think those are the definite 3 of them?
Yeah, what's weird is he's got a few guys that had that one huge year. Like Alexander Johnson had basically a huge year, and then decided to go. Didn't he go pro after his junior year out of the blue? That didn't make any sense. Ryan Reed was great at what he did. Derwin Kitchen was great at what he did. They had a lot of guys who were really good fits for those teams, but as far as all-time teams,
what about Sarge? What about Bernard James?
I'd go Bernard James. Yes.
Okay.
Well, see, I would go Singleton before Bernard if we were picking.
Ooh.
Singleton played 3 years and was a terror on defense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Bernard
fair.
was pretty good. Though.
Bernard was really good too. Like that, man, that's a tough one. Imagine being like, and this is just Florida State. Like, imagine if somebody called up, Wake Up Blue Devils, and asked those guys, like, hey, who's on your all-time Krzyzewski team? It's like, oh my God, I don't know, Reddick, Hurley, that would be incredible. That would be impossible. But I do think Singleton, man, was really, really good.
Did you just say all-time Krzyzewski team?
Oh, got him.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
Well, you just gave me crap about saying Krzyzewski.
I didn't say all-time Coach Krzyzewski.
Oh, whatever.
I didn't call him Coach. He's either Coach K or he's Mike or he's that guy from Durham. I don't show him the reverence that the War Chant managing editor does.
All right, Corey, you go first then, since you're going to be a Rebel. You set the tempo on this one. How much longer do you think Leonard coaches?
So he's 70, right? Man, 3 years, 2 years, maybe go out with Kevin. I mean, he can't start. I mean, I don't know. Is he going to coach till he's 80? I would just think at some point. Well, I don't know. His program. It'd be weird to build the program up to where it is now after 17 years. That it's as good a place as it's ever been, easily as good a place as it's ever been, and then bounce. Like, get it to exactly where you want it, seemingly, and be like, all right, now I'm good. Peace. I'm going to go retire. So I hate to think.
How about 2.5 over under?
Over.
Okay, I agree.
But if you ask me that with 5, I don't know. I don't. I mean, I think he's at a point now where he's not going to get. It's going to be his decision. But we've seen this happen. It plays out everywhere. I don't know if maybe in 4 or 5 years, if things turn south just a little bit, then maybe it's not like a polite shove. Like, hey man, we need to. It's been 20 years now. We got to make plans for new blood. But right now, I can't imagine he's thinking about it.
What is amazing though about this run is, you look at this past season, how many of their games were on ESPN or ESPN2? I mean, it was like every game, and it was. And I talked to Carl Hicks about it, basketball assistant, athletic director, and he said that basically the conversations with ESPN and the ACC before the season, they kind of pick which games, who's going to be in those high-profile games, and Florida State got a lot of them because they knew they were going to be a good team coming back from the Elite Eight, but also they had some high-profile matchups and things like that. But the way they're playing, the way they play these last couple of years, and to have so many of their games on national television, not just Raycom or whatever, but be on the ESPN or the Deuce. I just think they're at a point right now where, and you see it in recruiting, where they're recruiting it at such a high level. To your point, it's like, I don't think the faucet's going to stop. This wasn't a 1-year run. These 3 years have been amazing, and I think next year has a chance to be great as well. It does feel like there's a lot of inertia and motion going in the right direction. At the same time, I would say about 3 years. So I would say the over to your 2.5. But I definitely wouldn't say over for 5.
There you go.
Well, and I think the difference, they had a run like this before a few years ago when they made it 4 years in a row and won the ACC. But I don't think if you were a 16-year-old high school recruit looking to play somewhere, you'd watch Florida State in 2010 and say, that's where I want to go play, where we can win 52-50 and I can get 4 shots. Like, I think the way they play now, they completely transformed the way they play and the way he coaches, and it's a much more appealing way to play. Plus, if you come to Florida State, you're going to play because he plays the whole team.
Yeah.
I think it's much more appealing for high school recruits. So it'll be interesting to see if it starts feeding itself. It seems to be heading that route. It hasn't been proven yet, but yeah, man, it's 3 years in a row making the tournament. It's an Elite Eight appearance followed by heading into the postseason tournament with a number 10 national ranking. So this is now 3 years in a row of them being a top 10 caliber team, which I don't know that that's ever happened at Florida State before. So
Real quick, Aslan, but
sure.
Just on his point about how their entertainment factor. So today at the shoot-around, for part of the shoot-around, Florida State just basically had a dunk contest. And Corey gets a kick out of watching, the guards, FSU's guards, the way they dunk.
Right.
And it was funny. So they were, doing their dunks. There weren't a lot of people there. But later when, other fan bases would come, one of the ushers that was standing behind me, he he kept telling like these kids, man, you should have seen Florida State in here earlier. Man, they were doing. He was like trying to impersonate like what their dunks were, like windmills and all. And they're that team now. I mean, they're a fun team to watch. It's kind of cool.
It is. It's awesome, man. All right, let's see here. By the way, AK Dogs on YouTube says that Corey looks like Animal from the Road Warriors in that photo. So whenever you talk, Corey, I have this image that says voice of Corey Clark. And I don't even know where I found this photo somewhere on Google, but he says you look like Animal from the Road Warriors. So you got that going for you.
So there's a picture of me on the screen right now as I talk.
It says on the phone, Corey Clark, senior writer, and it's got your Twitter handle, Corey_Clark. Yep.
Oh, all right. Well, is it a good picture at least?
Not really, but that's what you get for, being on the road and neglecting me, man.
Yeah, not being near a computer. Okay,
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well,
apparently
I better look into that, people.
Apparently, you have your Georgia Bulldogs turnover shoulder pads on.
Yeah. What a rush! All right.
Yeah, if I look like Animal.
Yeah. All right. Noel Freak 85 checking in from Reston, Virginia. The most famous resident we've ever had is Grant Hill. Can the softball team get some love? They just went back-to-back no-nos against Notre Dame and FAM and are playing like a team looking for another national championship. If you haven't been to or seen a game on TV, it's a pretty cool thing to watch, especially when they are at full strength. Do you think you could get an interview with Coach Alameda for the Wake Up War Chant show? Wake up! He also puts in there. The Coaches and Coffee podcast her and her assistants do is fantastic. I highly recommend it. Yeah, we could probably do that. We can make some room for some national champions. What do you think, managing editor? Should we edit the show to make some room for them?
I'm all for it.
All
for it. You guys get that done.
All right, we will. Next question.
And they are really good, but they did lose to Notre Dame, which I was a little disappointed by. They still won the series, but they lost one of the games. But that story with Megan King throwing the no-hitter with the girl in the dugout was a really cool story. I hope people I'll never do it justice by talking about it here, but if you're on YouTube right now anyway, just type in, I don't know, what would you even type in? Megan King no-hitter, Florida State. I mean, it happened 2 days ago. So go find it and watch it because it's awesome.
FSU's softball account tweeted the SportsCenter version where Scott Van Pelt did a big breakdown of it. Yeah. And so if you go to FSU softball Twitter, you can find that from a couple days ago.
Or maybe it's deleted because ESPN doesn't like Florida State, so maybe Scott Van Pelt got in trouble and they deleted the video so it doesn't even exist. This question will go to you.
Probably.
This question will go to you, Ira. Comes from Noel Holla. Morning, although it's night because we're doing a Showtime Live. Now that Tate Martell has got a waiver for Miami, what do y'all think Travis's chance are to get his? Ira, we'll start with you.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, he has to get it. I mean, he has to. I mean, Tate Martell apparently, I think what his explanation for why he should get a waiver was the coaching staff changed, head coach left, and also it was a bad culture. There was a bad situation there. Well, man, was there a worse situation than Louisville football last year? I mean, there couldn't have been. I mean, there weren't many worse situations in Louisville last year. So Jordan Travis has to get it. And from what we had heard at the time, he was having attorneys working on it. This isn't just a kid requesting it. I think he had attorneys working on it. His family did. And, I think he has to get it. I mean, basically, I don't even know why they have the rule anymore. They're basically just, if you can come up with any reason, it seems like they're going to give it to you. So I would have to assume he does. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think it's an emergency situation for Florida State anymore. I think right now it's just because you got Hornibrook coming in and you have a few bodies there. But I do think it's just kind of the point. If Florida State doesn't get it while these other schools all do, Florida State fans are about to storm the castle.
Yeah. Free agency is here.
Wasn't Papa John, didn't he say some racist nonsense?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So you throw that into the mix, plus the fact that everybody gets it now. But it is ironic that now that they got the Hornibrook kid, it really isn't that important if Travis gets his waiver or not. But yeah, he definitely should get it if the kid at Miami got it.
Next question comes from Maxwell Gibbs. Mr. Aslan and Corey, just want to let you know I've already cleared it with my boss for the game on Thursday. Once it hits 2 p.m., I'm allowed to hide in a conference room and work, a.k.a. sit in the soundproof room and watch the game. He just asked that during commercials, I do be productive and also try to contain my emotions. This comes off watching the Virginia Tech game at my desk last week and yelling, "Woo! Suck it, Virginia Tech," when Vassell hit the 3 to send it to OT. My question, if you had to put a percentage on how healthy Trent Forrest and Phil Kofer are, what would it be? Corey, you go first.
Trent Forrest, I would say, is 60%, 65 maybe. I mean, you can watch him try to run up and down the court. It's not the guy that we've watched. It's certainly not the guy from last March. It just isn't. But he's done the best he can. Phil Cover, I don't know. Is he even going to play? I mean, I guess you'd put him lower than that since it's questionable whether he'll even play or not.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I think Trent's probably maybe 65 and Phil maybe is about 50 right now. So, yeah, it just stinks. I mean, it stinks for those guys because how many chances are you going to have in your life to be on the stage? But, yeah, I mean, I think Trent, he's figured out a way to play through it. But, yeah, he's not the guy that you just hope next year he can be totally healthy for one season because the kid's a special player. I mean, he's special right now. Imagine how special he'd be if he was healthy.
Yeah, the best we've seen Trent is last March. Like, that was the Trent Forrest. And he actually, at the beginning of this year, he did those things. Like, he would just – the Purdue game, the LSU game, he just impacts the game on both ends of the floor so much. And, yeah, if they had – literally, like, all the stuff I was saying 25 minutes ago about, hey, just enjoy the season, whatever happens, happens. If Trent Forrest was 100% healthy and had been normal Trent Forrest, number one, they wouldn't be a 4 seed. But also, I think you would be like, man, if they only get to the Sweet 16, yeah, that is a disappointment. Because a healthy Trent Forrest is a great college basketball player. To go along with Terrence Mann, who's really good, and Cabangeli, who's blossoming into one of the best players in the country, this team would be one of the most talented teams, maybe the most talented team Florida State's ever had. But an unhealthy Trent Forrest, man, I don't know. The ceiling obviously isn't quite as high.
How about, this is a stupid question, I'm sorry to bring it up, but obviously, Cabangeli comes off the bench for whatever reason. Him coming in 110% like a whirling dervish in the middle of a game is best for him. Like, is there any way that Leonard might manage Trent's minutes differently in the second half so that he can be a finish? I mean, that's what he does best, right, is finish these games. He did it towards the second half of the regular season. I mean, do you think maybe he has a longer leash on Trent of maybe keeping him on the bench, even if they are behind, just so he's good to go in the last 6 minutes of a game, Ira?
I'm going to defer to Corey on that. Corey's a better minute watcher than I am.
I'm glad you said that because I don't remember any of the minutes from the ACC tournament, but I do remember thinking to myself, man, it seems like a while since Trent's been on the floor. I do think he managed him differently in the ACC tournament. Now, that might have something to do with 3 games in 3 days, but I do think they really trust his backup, if you even want to call Nichols a backup, because they play together a good bit on the court at the same time. But, I do think he looks for spots to rest him for large minutes. And sometimes he'll even bring Terrence Mann back in and take Trent Forrest out, or it'll be Nichols, or it'll be Vassell. Somebody will come in, or MJ Walker. It'll be somebody that comes in for Trent. But at the end of the game, you best believe the final 5 or 6 minutes, Trent Forrest is on the floor at all times because that's the guy who he trusts. I would say more than anybody on the team is Trent Forrest is the guy that Leonard Hamilton trusts late in the game more than anybody else on the team.
2-part question here from Captain D63. This is the last question, guys. We made it. Congratulations. Thanks for toughing it out. And you at home as well, folks. Captain D63 says, our football team broke a long-time streak for winning seasons and bowl games. Is it too early to be concerned our baseball team may break a long streak by not winning 40 games in a season? I think somebody did the math the other day that right now the way it stands, Florida State, if you count 3 games in the ACC tournament and then 2 games in a regional, they would have to go 26-14 over that remaining stretch. I guess they have 40 games remaining. They won against FIU, so I guess now they can go 25-15. I don't know what my math is, but so that's where they stand right now. I'm not panicking. It's still just March. I know they're young. I just feel like they'll figure it out. As bad as the pitching has been, they got to figure out the lineup, the order, because they've got a lot of bats, like the Nico Baldor, Cooper Swanson, Alex Sanchez, Robbie Martin revolving door. Like once they figure that out, I think they'll be on their way. But I guess pitching is probably the biggest concern right now. That said, I still think they'll win 40 games. Ira.
Yeah, but I think that. Oh, sorry.
You asked Ira. Well, no, you go. Go ahead, Corey. Go ahead, man.
No.
I mean, I think he was. I think he was thinking. I think he was thinking you were going to hit cleanup and close us, bring us home.
Oh, all right.
But no, that wasn't good enough for you. You had to jump right in.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm more thinking like I'm in between Thomasville and Moultrie, so there's a real chance that I'm about to be dropped. so I
All
want
right,
to get
talk.
these pearls of wisdom in. The pitching is the thing, man. Their hitting is fine. Yeah, they got some dead outs in the lineup right now. They're not dead outs, but some kids are struggling, but they're still scoring runs. They're always going to find a way to score runs typically. But their pitching has been awful, just awful. Like even Van Eyck and Parrish have not been good, and they don't have anybody they can really count on. I don't think other than Flowers. Drohan has been their best starting pitcher, which is incredible. So they got to figure out the pitching. Everything else will be fine. Well, the defense will help too, but the bats will be there and the scoring will be there. But if the pitching keeps up like this, then yeah, I think it's time to panic. I mean, they got to find some arms, or Parrish and Van Eyck have to find themselves, because those two guys both have ERAs close to 5, and they're supposed to be two of the best pitchers in the country. So get that stuff figured out, and you still have a chance to do some really cool things this year. But if those guys continue to hover around 5 ERA-wise and can't get through the 4th or 5th inning or 6th inning, then yeah, man, it might be a bit of a bummer of a season. Ira, talk.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that the person asked that question, and that you said somebody else has already figured out that the math of the postseason, because I did this exercise last night as well when they lost. I got out the schedule and I'm like, okay, what do they got to do to get to 40? And they're going to have to do some work in the postseason, which is, that's kind of the not to say last resort, but it used to be they would get to 40 before the postseason. Now, the last few years, it's been kind of like, there was a couple years, 2 or 3 years ago, where it didn't look like they were going to get to 40, but they had a really good run, and they did. And so, I think I think they're probably going to need to get some wins in the ACC tournament and in a regional, unless, they sweep some series that we don't expect them to. But I mean, right now, you don't expect them to sweep anybody. And, you start looking at the way they played, not to overreact, but you look at the way they played and you say, well, shoot, man, I can see them losing, more games than you expected before. So I agree with what Corey's saying to a degree about the offense scoring some runs, but I mean, it's been like, they're giving up like 10 runs a game over the last couple of weeks. It's staggering how many runs they're giving up, and I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon.
What was somewhat encouraging was, I don't know, this is me being the optimistic guy, and I never am. Despite the way they lost to Florida and then Friday against NC State, that they did bounce back on Saturday, or almost did, and they dropped that one. And for them to win Sunday, lose tough the way they did against UCF, but battle back today, 3-run home run by Mendoza in the bottom of the 8th. At least it's not a team that's giving up. Not that,
no, I agree.
Not that we should set the bar that low, but for such a young team and the way they have struggled, the fact they still are battling, that's also adds into the reason I feel optimistic.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's
Just
definitely
those two guys. The two guys, the whole team, the anchors are those two starting pitchers.
Yeah.
Like literally, they were on the cover of magazines. They're supposed to be one of the best 1-2 combos in the country. They're really talented. Drew Parrish was a really good starting pitcher last year, and Van Eyck was one of the best freshmen in the country. They've got to pitch better. They've just got to. Or this team is an average baseball team. But if those two guys are what those two guys should be or can be, then all of a sudden you're talking about a team that, should win 40 games easily because you have a good starting rotation.
All right, it's the last part of the question. Captain D also sends a compliment to you, Ira. I enjoyed the second part of the interview with Jerry Cutts. I've been calling him Cutts. I got to figure that out probably. He found it very informative. The last question is, we know most probably don't have us going back to the Elite Eight, but what percentage do have us going to the Elite Eight or Final Four? And do you think Coach Ham will ever get a game changer like Zion before retiring from coaching at FSU?
I don't think that he's ever going to have a Zion. I think the chances for that were probably Wiggins and then this kid, the Edwards kid that they just lost recently to Georgia. I just don't think he's going to be in the market for those kinds of guys necessarily anytime soon. I think he's going to focus on what's worked for him. But as far as percentage chances go, I think there's I would say the chances of getting to the Elite Eight are probably about 25-30%. And I think the Final Four is probably 15 to 20%. They've got chances. But Gonzaga, you're playing a number 1 seed in Gonzaga in the Sweet 16, assuming you get there. So they may be the weakest of the 4, but they're still a great team. Got a lot of weapons. I'm not going to say they would be. They're not. I wouldn't pick them over Florida State, but I think it's going to be a tall task. So I put it about 25, maybe 30% chance of getting to the Elite Eight. What about you, Corey?
Still with us, Corey? There he is. Yes.
11%.
11%. To get to the Final
Okay.
Four. To get to the Elite Eight, I'm going to say 22.5.
Okay.
I like it.
Oh,
What
one last thing.
If Phil Kofer was healthy, what would you put? 23%?
Ooh, nice.
I'd say 23.7. So I guess you round
Okay.
up to 24. Yeah, I get it about 24%.
All right.
Last thing before we go. So we did the odds makers thing on warchant.com. Use the promo code warchant30 for 30 free days of access to warchant.com. So, Ira, I don't know if you have this, if this is on your radar, but I actually made a bet with one of our subscribers that if I get the bet right, this guy's never going to post again on Warchant. If I get it wrong, I have to quit my job. So,
Wow.
I don't know. It's
This
not
is,
look,
I'm
yes,
not sure.
You've gone to Hartford. You've gone to Hartford, and it's gone to hell in a handbasket.
I wasn't consulted on that wager and whether or not you're allowed to do that wager, but okay.
This guy.
Also, we don't want to lose his money. Like, we don't want
Either.
him to not subscribe to Warchant either.
This is a no-win proposition for
Dock
us.
it out of
Yeah.
my paycheck. Dock it out of my paycheck. So that he patronized the hell out of me, which is why I got upset. But so we did an odds makers thing, folks, and basically we kind of went on, what are the odds that Florida State's going to win 7 games this year, 8 games, and on and on and on, sort of. 7, 8, and 10, I think, might have been the numbers. Now, the problem here, I guess, is, was this supposed to be what I believe, or if I was running a sports book somewhere? So we were all pretty close. I think most of us, in terms of 7 wins, said, 2-1, 3-1, nothing really crazy, something that you'd probably see. But the discrepancy was 10 wins. So I think Corey, Gene, and Ira had somewhere between 20 and 30-1 odds that Florida State would win 10 or more games. I said 50-1. 50-1 probably maybe a little too steep or maybe a little too skeptical. But my thing is, like, if I was running a book, like if I was making a bet, the value for me, I wouldn't, like, 20-1 would not be a good enough value for me to put down $100 on that bet. Like, Florida State's 125-1 to win the national title. Like, 10 wins. Part of me also was thinking just regular season. If you put a bowl game in, that affects things. But this guy was all on my case about it. And I'm just like, I'm just throwing a number out there. This isn't necessarily my prediction or my forecast, but that's what I put for my odds.
How many times did you guys go back and forth before you threatened to quit versus him never getting to post again?
I never threatened to quit. So he comes at me and posts the thing about, hey, sunshine, you're scorching hot take 50-1, put your money where your mouth is. And I'm like, you write whatever the bet. I'm like, write whatever the bet is that would involve you leaving this website for good if I win. And then he's like, all right, well, if they win 9 games or more, you have to quit your job and leave for good. And I'm like, you're on me about 10 wins, and then you make the bet not even about 10 wins. So then he goes back and anyhow, it's crazy because I was talking about this to somebody at the baseball game. We keep talking about how much more manageable the schedule is. I don't feel good about Clemson. I don't think I'm in the minority on that. I don't feel good about Florida either, which has got a lot of people upset. I just don't. So now we're looking at 10 remaining games. 3 of them are coin flips to a certain degree. Louisville, Miami, and Boston College were all one-possession games last year. I still think Florida State probably goes 2-1 at worst in that 3-game stretch. They could probably win all 3. I do think they'd go 2-1 probably there. But you got at Virginia, and then how much easier really is Boise neutral site than Virginia Tech last year? So the more I think about it, I'm like, I don't really think it's that easy of a schedule.
I think one thing real quick is, and I need to go back and look at it, but I think the issue with when I saw your odds, what kind of took me aback was you had that 50-1, 10 wins, but I think you had like 6 wins, like 500 or worse, lower. And I think that's probably where people are like, wait a minute, you think it's more likely that Florida State goes 500 or worse than you do they're going to win 10 games? Like that I think that to me is where I would take exception. I don't think they're going to win 10 games, but if they win 5 games, I mean, good grief. I mean, I can't even imagine that. Corey?
Do you think Gene's watching this right now? Or do you think he'll come back and...
So to recap, Gene Williams, our boss, went on vacation. I got on a flight to Hartford, Connecticut to cover the basketball tournament. And Aslan is I don't know.
Warring.
Yes,
I'm in the
warring
midst of a battle.
Corey, it seems like
Yeah,
you should
he's
be.
threatening people. Yeah, I was going to say, I just want people to know, maybe Ira, you should give a disclaimer that Aslan's thoughts don't necessarily represent the management of Orchant, because we don't want to tell people to get off our site forever. That's not a message where, hey, if I win this bet, you don't get to post here again. Well, no, that's lose-lose. You need to be if Aslan, you should say, look, if I win this bet, you have to subscribe for life.
There you go.
That's what it should be, and your kids have to be subscribers. It has to be left in their will. Don't say. I mean, then we all lose if the guy stops posting and unsubscribes to Warchant just because you want a dumb bet about a 50-1 odds.
I'm not going to make the guy leave. I'll show mercy. I'll make him after. This is 2019, ladies and gentlemen. This is 2019. Your boy here is arguing with a guy whose avatar is an ostrich. This is 2019 in a nutshell for you. But to your point, Ira, I guess maybe okay, that's fair, I guess. 6 or less, I have 8-1.
Yeah, I mean, 6 or less, you have 8-1. It's that likely. But to win 10, 50-1, I mean, that's where I'm with him a little bit. I'm not saying I want you to leave the site, Aslan.
Right.
I'm just saying, but I could see where he'd be, hey, dude, is it that much more likely that they're going to go 6-6 versus 10-1?
Well, they go 6-6. They could go 5-7 again. They could go 6-7. But they're 5-7. Like the chance of them doubling their win. That's what I think.
Oh.
I think if you're setting like odds as a bookie, a team that's 5-7, like no one's gonna be like, oh yeah, 10 wins. Heck yeah, man. Like here's all my money. Take that. I'll eat that alive. It's like, ooh, yeah, maybe.
I'm with you on that. I'm just saying I think the 6 or under or 500 or worse should have been pretty high as well. I think that's where the person got their dander up.
Well, how about this then, Corey? What do you think about my revised look at the way the schedule is? Because when it first dropped, I think both of us were pretty bullish on it. You even wrote a really good column about it. I know you don't want to think that far in the future because you're in a car right now and you just want to relax. But like, yeah, the way I laid the schedule out in terms of you've got at least one game that looks really daunting, another game that looks fairly daunting in Florida, a couple coin flip games, one possession games from last year, and then like, do we think Syracuse and NC State, just because those games are now in Tallahassee and like in Kendall Browse here, that's going to swing 25 points? Like, it could. It definitely could. I'm just saying when we start thinking about the schedules being easy, do we not look at it in its totality in those angles? Or we lost Corey, Ira. Or
do you think we lost him, or do you think he just hung up?
We probably lost. Are you trying to say he got upset at me and hung up? That could could totally be worth it.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm with you. When people say the schedule is easier, I think it's more manageable. And I think if you say, well, you won 5 games last year and you're going to be better this year and it's more manageable, yeah, you would say because of where the bye is set up and everything else, I would say, yeah, I think they should probably win 8 games with modest improvement. But no, I don't think it's an easy schedule by any stretch. And, so I'm with you on that. I think people have made a leap from it's more manageable to it's easy, and it's not an easy schedule. I agree with you on that. But the other part of it is, 1 or 2 of those wins they got last year, they could have been losses. I mean, Louisville could have been a loss.
Yeah. Boston College
could have been a loss.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were 5-7 and close to 8-4. They were 5-7 and they could have been, 4-8. Right. So anyway, I still think they're going to be better. But look, I mean, to your point, what Vegas has it. That was the whole point of the whole article. Really, was that not the point, but kind of the jumping off point was that Vegas has the win total at 7.5. And remember last year, I think it was 8. I think it was 7 or 8 last year. And I remember thinking, man, that seems really low for Florida State. And it turned out they were right. And so this year it's 7.5. So they're not, Vegas certainly doesn't think Florida State's going to be a 10-win team.
Yeah. All right, man. That's all I was trying to convey. So hopefully I'll be here next year when we're doing this, when we're going back to the Final Four defending the national championship.
So what happens? Like why would you have to leave the job? What would what would have to happen for you to have to peace out?
I don't know. Well, no, they'd have to win 10 or more.
Oh, okay.
So they win 10 or more games, and I have to quit the job.
All right. Well, we'll have to figure out a way.
See, man, you leave town and then Gene leaves town and I get you guys in trouble. I apologize. Thanks to everybody who's watching. If you're just catching up with us, again, use the promo code WARCHANT30 for 30 free days of access to WARCHANT.com, the ultimate Seminole sports source. Ira Schoffel joining us from Hartford, Connecticut, side of Florida State's first round matchup, hopefully second round matchup as well. They'll take on Vermont Thursday, 2:30. He'll have plenty of updates, and we'll be running some updates. He'll have a full wrap-up from that game. And we'll do this again hopefully next week as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. The replay will be going up shortly. Thanks, Ira. Take care up there, man.
Thanks, man.